Hello guys, this is your friend. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was trained by Shinigami instead of Jiraiya and got powerful harem with Kushina? P2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start a new fanfic. 3 days later. Naruto, Kushina, and Jiraiya continued to walk towards Tea Country for their mission, which was to protect the daimyo's treasury from some kind of thieves that were targeting it. Some of the awkwardness that was there at the start of the trip was gone after those 3 days of walking and talking. Naruto had forgotten that incident somewhat, but it was rather hard to do with Kyuubi constantly reminding him. While they traveled, Kushina taught Naruto more of her kenjutsu and taijutsu, and she was more than pleased that the result of the seals on her son's body were working better than she could imagine. As she always knew, Naruto was a fast learner and he had the bruises and aches to prove it, but even in his one day off, the blonde was still learning about chakra control from Jiraiya as the Sannin gave him books to read, which Naruto pouted and Kushina giggled since she shared the same dislike for books just like her son. Currently, they had just arrived in Tea Country and the sun was going down. Everyone finally sighed and stopped near a restaurant. They saw many people conversing and walking the pretty light-filled streets. Finally here. So when do we meet this daimyo? Naruto asked while he sat on the ground. Jiraiya sighed and took out the mission scroll and looked through its contents. We can meet with him after we get something to eat. Why don't you two get something and I'll set up the hotel? Jiraiya said while Naruto and Kushina turned to each other, then gave Jiraiya their individual blank stares. Aren't you gonna be hungry? Kushina asked and Jiraiya grinned as he walked away. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw Jiraiya's retreating form and sighed when he heard the man's reply. Oh, don't worry about me. I'll simply meet up with you guys in the next hour, Jiraiya said, giggling while he walked away. It was now Kushina's turn to sigh when she remembered that back when she was alive, Tea Country was quite famous for its brothels, and knowing Jiraiya, that was kind of easy to figure out. Oh well, Sochi, let's get something to eat now, Kushina said, walking into the restaurant while Naruto got to his feet and followed in after her. The restaurant was rather quaint looking, but they weren't in the mood to be picky. Kushina sat at a table and Naruto sat across from her. Both were given menus and ordered some good-looking food. They were still rather tired, so neither was in the mood to eat anything big. Naruto simply ate some soup with a couple of sandwiches while Kushina had the same thing. It was a rather simple dinner and not much conversation was going around, but for different reasons between the mother and son duo. Naruto, no matter how hard he tried, couldn't forget that night when he felt a small attraction to his mother. He knew he was the only one feeling this way, but Kushina, if given enough time, would pick up some of the hints, and that worried Naruto slightly. He looked up from his meal to see Kushina quietly eating her food and he unconsciously examined her again. His eyes looked at her creamy-looking skin of her face and then noticed her long, beautiful, red hair. He could really see why his father could fall for such a woman, but what worried him was that just maybe he was starting to also. He had always thought that he liked Sakura, but somewhere in the back of his mind he knew he was deluding himself. He remembered how hard Sakura cried when Sasuke had woken up from that coma that Itachi put him in. Naruto sighed when he also remembered the multiple times that Sakura did hit and berate him. He wasn't oblivious to it also. He wasn't sure why he always allowed it, but he felt that maybe Sakura would come around someday. I guess that was a dream also, Naruto thought and sighed before he looked at his mother again. Even though it was soup and some sandwiches, Kushina was eating with some grace that made Naruto compare her to Sakura, and then the blonde chuckled that it was ridiculous. Mainly because he couldn't compare Sakura to his mother. Sakura lacked all the things that made Kushina look amazing. He could have chalked that up to Sakura still having a childlike body, but he knew that even if she was older, she still wouldn't compare to his mother. That long red hair, the creamy skin, and the just amazing presence she exuded. Kushina felt her son's eyes on her as she ate, and truth be told, she was rather embarrassed by it. She wasn't sure why he was looking at her so intently, but she figured that Naruto was still coming to terms that she was alive and in front of him. Kushina mentally smiled when she thought that. She was rather happy also that she could be with him like this. For all those years, she wondered what it was like to be with her son, and when Minato wanted to make him a Jinchuriki, Kushina felt such unparalleled sadness, but Naruto grew up to be a fine young man in her eyes. Naruto looked so much like Minato that the resemblance was uncanny, but Kushina wouldn't dare compare Naruto to Minato in any other way than appearance. Naruto wasn't Minato, he was Naruto, and he was going to stay that way. Kushina decided to break Naruto's gaze and looked up from her food. "Is something bothering you, Naru-kun?" Kushina asked, and Naruto quickly stopped his staring and blushed in embarrassment. He had been caught looking at his mother, or maybe she knew all along, but didn't say anything to him. Nothing really, Ka-san. I'm done with my food, so I'm gonna go," Naruto said quickly, getting up and left the restaurant. Kushina frowned when she saw Naruto leave. It's like the blonde was avoiding her for some reason. Kushina looked at her son's plate and saw that he still have a few sandwiches left. She looked at her own plate and saw she was just about finished, which shows that she was the one relatively eating. "Sochi, what's wrong with you?" Kushina wondered as she placed some money on the table and walked out of the restaurant to meet up with Jiraiya. With Naruto. Naruto sighed as he walked through the streets. He was an idiot. He just ran out of the restaurant so fast before his mother could even respond. Maybe it was on the spur of the moment, he wasn't sure, but he could feel that he just made things a bit more complicated. "No kidding, brat. Now she's definitely gonna be suspicious of you now," Kyuubi said, and Naruto sighed with a nod. "It's not my fault," Naruto said, and Kyuubi grinned like mad. He was still having so much fun as he toyed with his container. "Hey, you were the one checking her out. I'll admit that she's nice looking for a human, even if we have a I hate you, you hate me relationship," Kyuubi said, and Naruto chuckled. He could see that. Kyuubi and Kushina arguing every day about something that didn't even matter. "I'm sure I don't want to know," Naruto said, and Kyuubi snorted, then faded. Naruto wasn't sure if that was supposed to be a response or not, but he didn't care at the moment. After a few hours of aimless walking, Naruto came up to a large building and raised an eyebrow. He saw Jiraiya talking to someone and walked over. "Ero Sennin, what are you doing?" Naruto asked, bringing Jiraiya's attention to him. The Sanin's eyebrow twitched before he smacked Naruto up the head. "You damn brat, I told you not to call me that." Jiraiya yelled while Naruto rubbed his head. "You don't have to hit me, you damn pervert," Naruto said while Jiraiya sighed and turned back towards the man he was talking to. "Sorry about that. Now then, when would you like us to start guarding the treasury?" Jiraiya asked, and Naruto turned to the man in formal clothing. He gasped when he realized that Jiraiya was talking to the daimyo of T Country. Maybe the big building was his home. The daimyos always were fancy in most things. "If at all possible, I would like you to begin tonight. I don't want any of those ninja getting to my stuff. I've already received threats on a constant basis, so I don't need to worry about any more things while I rule this country," the daimyo said, and Jiraiya nodded while Naruto watched the interaction between the two. Sounds like a real problem if they're targeting the daimyo only for his wealth. "Maybe he did something," Kushina said, startling Naruto, which made him jump. He quickly turned around to see his mother and her smile, but he felt, or rather could sense, some sadness exuding from her, and he knew it was his fault. Jiraiya seemed to know, but didn't say anything. "I haven't done anything. I've only been in office for a few months," the daimyo said, making Kushina sigh. "Alright, sorry. I didn't mean anything by it. Just wondering. So Jiraiya, when do we start?" Kushina asked, and Jiraiya grinned like mad. "Right now. We'll take a look at the interior of the place and we'll plan from there. If they try to come, then we'll capture one person and have him lead us to the others," Jiraiya told them, making Naruto and Kushina nod. "Let me show you all inside," the leader of T Country said as Jiraiya followed him inside. Kushina was going to walk, but Naruto grabbed her hand, making his mother look at him. Ka-san, listen, I'm sorry I ran out like that. I just wanted to tell you that, Naruto said, and Kushina looked at him for a second. She could see he was really sorry, but he was also keeping something from her. Though she was happy that he was talking to her. The last thing she wanted for the both of them to feel any awkwardness between them. It's alright, Naru-kun. I'm sorry if I did something to make you leave, Kushina said as she sent her son a sincere smile. Naruto nodded with his own foxy grin as they walked inside the building. The sight they were greeted to shocked them. The hallway was so exquisite and beautiful. Imported wood was used for most of it, while chandeliers hung from the ceiling to light up the room. They saw Jiraiya's sandals at the doorstep and took off their shoes also. After a bit of walking and admiring the place, Kushina and Naruto made it to Jiraiya, who was sitting on the couch. Alright, he has left us in charge of the place and went to bed. I told it'd be best if he went somewhere safe, but he said that this was the only place that felt that way, so there was nothing I can do, Jiraiya said, making Kushina and Naruto nod. So what's the plan? Naruto asked, ready to get the ball rolling. Jiraiya nodded and took out a map with the layout of the building. Well, I can hold my own against these guys, so you two will be a pair. From what the daimyo told me, they came at two major points. From the windows and the lower levels of the palace. Apparently his guards can't do anything to stop them, so that's where we come in. I'll stop them at the lower levels if they go down there, while you two guard the windows. Keep your guard up, Jiraiya said and furled up the scroll. Naruto and Kushina nodded while Jiraiya walked away. You know, I feel sorry for anyone who fights you, Ka-san, Naruto said, and Kushina grinned before putting her shoes back on along with Naruto. I suppose, but you better not slack off just because I can back you up, Kushina replied, and Naruto rolled his eyes before nudging his mother's shoulder. Don't look down on me, Ka-san. Besides, I'm no pushover, Naruto said, and Kushina giggled. I suppose not. Well then, Naru-kun, get started. We don't want to let them know we're here, Kushina stated as she turned out the lights. Naruto nodded and took up a hiding spot while he sent clones to the other floors to monitor the windows in those places. 5 hours later, Naruto sighed and rubbed his eyes. It was late and they hadn't seen any instance of activity. He saw Kushina sitting down next to him while she was reading a small book. Naruto glanced at it and saw it was about creating jutsus that went well with kenjutsu. He had asked her earlier why she didn't go off with his clones or in an individual room to be sure no one was inside, and Kushina told him that she was a talented sensor. She could sense even where Jiraiya was, and she would know if someone was going to one of the other places. Say, Kyuubi, can you sense anything? Naruto asked, making Kyuubi yawn while he tiredly opened one of his eyes. Yeah, they're coming. Your mother's sensor abilities reach the next few rooms, but I can tell they're outside. At least 10 are in front of the window. There are 2 where the perv is. You're lucky, kid. The 2 below are A and B ranked people. Anyone coming through the window is C ranked, which you'll be fine with dealing with, or at least you should be, Kyuubi said, turning silent. Naruto sighed and got to his feet, making his mother take her eyes off her book. What's wrong, Naru-chan? Kushina asked, trying out a new name for her son while Naruto grabbed his sword and tightened his grip. Ka-san, get ready for a fight, Dadbayo, Naruto said, grinning like mad while Kushina got to her feet. Her son pointed outside and Kushina concentrated her senses on that spot. She widened her eyes when she felt the 10 chakra signatures that Kyuubi felt also. The redhead closed her book and put it away while she took out a kunai. It's been a while since I could do this. Let's see if I still got it, Kushina said to herself while Naruto unsheathed his sword. He felt a weird aura come off it and he looked at the summoning contract on his hand, which glowed slightly before fading. Naruto narrowed his eyes and jumped to the ceiling while Kushina stayed behind a curtain. After another few minutes, the windows opened and the enemy appeared. Naruto narrowed his eyes while he stayed to the ceiling. He had spent time with his mother on his chakra control and he got even better with it. Is everything ready? One of them asked the other. They had crossed out Kiri headbands, so that was obvious for the moment. Yep. Those damn guards got what they deserved. Now let's raid this place, then we burn it like all the others. I don't see why we need those other 8 guys. We're more than enough to handle this, the other said, making the older one narrow his eyes. Stop complaining and get the job done. We have to raid this place before the daimyo wakes up. Who knows who he sent after our last 2 attempts were your fault, he said. Hey, it wasn't my fault. Those damn guards snuck up on me and I had to kill them. Don't blame me, the younger said while the older sighed. Whatever, let's just go now, he said as he reached for the door that was connected to the hallway, but before he could turn the knob, Naruto jumped down and kicked him away into the wall, surprising the two. You're a little late to be trying anything with us. Now why don't you get lost before I kick your? Naruto said, making Kushina smile behind the curtain. She wouldn't come out just yet. She just wanted to see how well Naruto could actually do for now with the seals on. Well, looks like we have a brat trying to be tough. And he's a ninja, how nice. I knew today would be different, one of the bandits said, and Naruto grinned. He might have been feeling weighed down, but that wouldn't affect him for a little while. Naruto took the offensive stance that his mother taught him while the 2 missing nin took out 2 chakra blades. So it's gonna be a sword fight, huh? Well, kid, you're out of luck. We were runner-ups in becoming some of Kiri's swordsmen. Even you should know how good Kiri is with their swords, the 2 Chunin level nin said, and Naruto narrowed his eyes. He didn't care about any of that. Besides, he was being trained by an Kenjutsu legend, and that was more than enough for him. Well then, why don't you show me how good you are right now? Naruto yelled as he sent chakra to his feet and dashed at them. The younger Chunin blocked Naruto's strike with his blade and tossed a kick at the blonde, and Naruto widened his eyes in a sudden realization. This guy was slow. Too slow. Naruto could dodge so easily. His mother was so much faster and stronger. The blonde ducked under the kick before he sent his sword at the man's side, but he was stopped by the other Chunin nin and narrowed his eyes. Well, at least you can move well, the guy said, and Naruto grinned. He saw his mother watching him from behind the curtain and was going to show her that he would improve. Well, thank you. I have a great sensei, Naruto replied, dug into his pouch and threw a kunai at the older bandit, making the man duck. The blonde then turned and kicked the younger one out the window, making all their allies gasp as he was sent crashing into the ground. What the hell was that? Someone yelled while everyone saw Naruto jump out of the palace. The blonde grinned and turned to the older one. Aren't you going to come at me also? Naruto asked, making the man grit his teeth before he chuckled with a vein in his head. Cheeky bastard, the guy said as his chakra blade glowed blue. This was the finest chakra blade he could get. It would make short work of the blonde idiot's sword. Naruto jumped into the air and threw a flame tag kunai at the man, but he dodged it easily as the kunai embedded itself on the wall. After a few seconds, it exploded, sounding the alarms throughout the palace. Naruto crossed his fingers and yelled. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, the blonde yelled, making 3 clones. Get the daimyo out of the building. I'll handle this, Naruto said to his clones. They nodded and ran off before he heard the 2 others smirk. Kid, your way out of your league. In case you don't know it, but you're surrounded, the man said, and Naruto narrowed his eyes, allowing his hair to cover over them. Not really. It's just you 2 and me. Ka-san can take care of the rest, Naruto said, making the 2 men laugh out loud. Oh, this kid is funny. He still needs his mama to do things for him. To think I almost respected him, the older guy said while the younger laughed. Naruto just kept up his grin as he saw someone sheath their sword. That wasn't any fun at all, Databane, Kushina said as the 2 turned around to see all 8 of their comrades on the ground while the redhead flipped her hair. I should have gone with Jiraiya. Maybe he's having fun right now, Kushina said, making the 2 grit their teeth as Naruto's sword glowed. The blonde raised an eyebrow and the summoning contract on his hand glowed even more, making the blonde shield his eyes. Kushina stared at Naruto's sword, and so did the 2 Chunin level bandits as Naruto closed in on them. his hair covering his eyes. His body wasn't radiating any ki, and yet he had the feeling of death all around him. Naruto raised his head, showing his eyes to be slightly silver along the outside of his cerulean eyes. He bit his thumb and traced it over his seal. Kuchio's no jutsu, Naruto said, and he didn't have to turn around. The reactions from the two were enough to know they were staring at the Shinigami. What is this kid? The older one said while Shin turned to Naruto. Time for you to learn the first part of being a human Shinigami, Shin said, and Naruto nodded. The blonde dashed forward with his sword, but the two guys blocked it before Naruto landed to the ground. He felt so light on his feet right now. It was like his mother's seals weren't even affecting him in the least. Naruto appeared behind the two while he slashed his sword forward. The younger brother blocked the blonde's attack, but something was wrong. Their swords were the best, and Naruto's sword wasn't supposed to be this good against a Kiri sword. It should have broke long ago. What is that sword made out of? The younger said as he backflipped away from the blonde. He huffed and Naruto's smile widened. It wasn't evil, but it was good. It was the smile of someone just happy to be living. The blonde turned to his surprised mother and grinned. Ka-san, I'm going to keep improving and I'm gonna show you how good I am, Naruto said as he blurred out of sight. He wasn't sure what it was, but Shin was affecting him in some way. Even Kyuubi was up and watching the fight unfold. Naruto appeared behind the younger nin and his sword pierced his stomach. The older shinobi gasped as Naruto twisted the sword through the younger one's body as he separated it. Kushina widened her eyes as she saw a small white humanoid-looking thing next to Naruto. Slice through it, Naruto-sama. This is the first step to being a human Shinigami, Shin said, and Naruto did so. He slashed through the figure and before long it was absorbed into his sword while the man's body dropped to the floor. Naruto's sword glowed even more and the blonde smiled. What did you do? The older nin asked, and Naruto was more than happy to reply to him. I sealed his soul into my sword. I see what Shin meant when he said that he wouldn't be using his blade anymore. He sent that energy into my sword and now my sword is the essence of the Shinigami. Or the sword of death, Naruto said, making the man grit his teeth. Damn you to hell, he said as he dashed at Naruto. The blonde brought his sword back and closed his eyes. You're already there, Datbeo, the blonde said calmly and slashed forward. He opened his eyes to see the soul of the bandit in front of him and grinned. When he was younger, he remembered Sarutobi talking with some Anbu in his office about a certain jutsu involving the Shinigami. Naruto was real good at hiding since he could outrun Anbu even with his Kill Me orange jumpsuit. So Naruto slapped his hands together. I'm new to it, but this might work. Fuinjutsu. Shiki Fujin, Naruto yelled and Shin gave a small smirk. The brat was full of surprises. So you heard of that jutsu? Normally I'd take your soul, but our contract states I can't, so you're free, Shin said as he grabbed the soul of the man and sealed it into the pot, never to be revived again. The area was vacant while Naruto turned to the Shinigami. So are you going to train me now? Naruto asked and the Shinigami looked at the sword in the blonde's hand. That's right. You've passed. I wanted you to use the blade as a rite of passage. Now your training will begin, Shin said and Naruto nodded before the spirit disappeared. Naruto turned to his shocked mother who still couldn't get over it. Her son was the summoner to the Shinigami. The thought itself was scary enough. Kushina walked up to her son and looked at him. You're just full of surprises, Kushina said and Naruto looked at the ground. He sheathed his sword like he was almost disappointed in himself for doing this in front of his mother. You aren't mad at me? Naruto asked. The last thing he wanted was for his mother to reject him also because of another scary power that came to him. His reply was Kushina bringing him into a tight hug, making the blonde gasp. How could I be mad at my son? I was a little worried about you, but you handled everything perfectly. Never think I hate you, Naru-kun. You're my son after all. Your kenjutsu could use some work, but you did it, Kushina said and Naruto wrapped his arms around his mother. Cough cough, Are we having a moment? Jiraiya said, shocking the two. He had two tied up people inside. He never thought they'd be that easy. They were supposed to be A-rank missing nin, but as Jiraiya had found out, they were only lying so no one would get in their way. Bunch of idiots. No wonder Jiraiya took them down so fast. Was that it? I mean, we're done, right? Naruto asked, and Jiraiya nodded while rubbing the back of his head. Well, let's just be happy that we got through everything without a hitch. I saw Naruto's clones rescue the daimyo. He's outside at the moment, so let's take these two to him and he'll decide what happens, Jiraiya said, and the two Uzumaki nodded and went to the daimyo. They saw the man out in his lawn and came to him. Here you go, daimyo-sama. It didn't take long as we thought it would. They were just some shinobi bandits all around Chunin level. Here are the two leaders of the assault, Jiraiya said, and the daimyo got up. Thank you, Jiraiya-sama. I'll go inform Hokage-sama of this success when I send a messenger to Konoha, the daimyo said, making Jiraiya, Kushina and Naruto bow with their thanks as they left. So what now? Naruto asked, making Jiraiya scoff. I'm going to bed. You can do whatever you want, brat, Jiraiya replied, heading for the hotel. Meanwhile, Kushina and Naruto stayed out in the streets just watching the old sage retire to his room. Anything you want to do, Ka-san? Naruto asked, and Kushina shrugged her shoulders. She then yawned and Naruto grinned. I guess it's late. Let's go to bed, Naruto said and opened the door. Kushina followed him, and the night was laid away by the group of three and them completing their first mission together. Next morning. Come on, Naru-kun. Your kenjutsu is good, but it still leaves room for improvement, Kushina said, and Naruto sighed for like the 10th time since they woke up. This just wasn't fair at all. Jiraiya had gone off somewhere while Kushina and Naruto continued with the blonde's lesson in kenjutsu and taijutsu. Ka-san, you're not fair at all, Naruto said, laying on the ground. Kushina giggled a little more while the sweat dropped off Naruto's face. Kushina laid next to Naruto and watched him relax from her training. She could only imagine him in the next few years. He'd be quite the man when she was done with him. It was then that Kushina smelled something and her nose pinpointed it to Naruto. She was smelling her son's sweat from their training. He had a weird smell to his body, but it was intoxicating to her. The red-headed habanero caught herself and stood to her feet. What was she doing? She couldn't be acting like this. Naruto turned to see his mother looking weird and raised an eyebrow. Ka-san, are you alright? Naruto asked, and Kushina slightly jumped from his question. Yes, Naruto, I'm fine. Why do you ask? Kushina countered, and Naruto narrowed his eyes. Well, you breathing heavily and you didn't call me. Never mind, Naruto said as he whistled away. Kushina glared at her son for a bit before she sighed. Sorry, I'm probably just thinking too much, she replied, and Naruto seemed to accept that for the moment. Naruto then just laid in the plains and sighed. Ka-san, I'm glad you're back, Naruto said, and Kushina wondered what brought that one, but she didn't complain about it at all. Despite her thinking, she hugged Naruto, making the blonde widen his eyes. Well, we have you to thank for that. Trust me, Naruto-kun, I'm not going anywhere, Kushina said, and Naruto knew that she wasn't lying. She was too much of a woman to do that. Thank you, Ka-san. When we go back to Konoha, what are you going to do? Naruto asked her, and Kushina put the tip of her finger before smiling. Oh, I'm gonna pay a visit to Tsunade. Get some explanations and maybe get you to our house in Konoha, which I told them you should get, but apparently no one listened, Kushina said with a dark chuckle. Naruto gulped before Kushina stood to her feet. Well, Sochi, come on. We've got 2 years to make this work, and I'm gonna teach you until you can't move, Kushina said, and Naruto sighed. That was his mother and he wasn't complaining. 2 years later. Sigh. How long am I gonna be writing these damn documents? I swear this job doesn't get any easier, Tsunade said, slumping her shoulders. It was then that Shizune came through the door with a smile. Today's the day, isn't it, Tsunade-sama? Shizune asked, and Tsunade grinned. She looked out the window and off into the distance. Time for that brat to come home. That's right. My stress is totally going to increase, but I don't understand this note that Jiraiya sent me, Tsunade said, giving it to Shizune to read. To Tsunade. Tsunade Haim, I'm glad I got to you. We're arriving to Konoha soon and I just want to tell you one thing. Run. She's coming. Get out of there now. This is the bad day to be you. I got my beating, now it's your turn, but run. Jiraiya. Shizune looked at the note and raised an eyebrow. Sounds like you're in danger, Shizune said while Tsunade scoffed. Like anything could be dangerous to me. Did you forget who I am? Tsunade asked while Shizune shook her head at her master. She was still gonna be weary of this note just in case. Well, anyway, I guess it's time to go, Tsunade said, getting up from her seat and walking for the door. That's right. We can't keep them waiting, can we? Shizune asked as she left also. Near Konoha, 3 people were walking towards Konoha. One was the more recognizable Jiraiya in his usual clothes. The next was a woman about 30 who was wearing a long-sleeve blouse with a t-shirt under it. Her hair was red and slid down her slender form. It was Kushina Uzumaki, Naruto's mother, and speaking of the blonde Kyuubi Jinchuriki. He was now taller with his blonde hair showing 2 small bangs on the side of his face. He was wearing a black obi shirt and black pants. On his arm were small black guards that covered that portion of his arm and the seal over his hand. It was all complete with an orange sash that was wrapped around his waist and some black shoes. On his right was his sword that he had used for those 2 years. Finally back. Man, this place hasn't changed at all, Naruto said as they came up to the village gates. The 2 gate guards Azumo and Kotetsu looked up and smiled. Hey, isn't that? Azumo started, but didn't finish as he got a nod from his buddy Kotetsu. That's right, but who's the woman with him? Kotetsu asked, but Azumo shook his head. It really hasn't changed at all. Well, except for the Hokage faces, but that's to be expected, right, Naru-kun? Kushina asked, getting a nod from Naruto as they walked through the village. With Sakura. Sakura continued to walk through the village on a supply check for Tsunade and went about her way until she saw her master and Shizune walking towards the village gates. Tsunade-sama, Shizune-san, where are you going? Sakura asked, making Tsunade and Shizune gasp at her, which in turn made Sakura raise an eyebrow. What did I say? Sakura asked and Shizune giggled while Tsunade shook her head. Don't you know what today is? Tsunade asked and Sakura narrowed her eyes. She thought it over for a second and after some though she widened her eyes in realization before slumping her shoulders. How could I forget that? Is he here yet? Sakura asked and Tsunade grinned like mad while shrugging her shoulders. Not sure, but he'll be here soon, Tsunade said, and she, Shizune, and Sakura walked off towards the gates of Konoha. With Naruto. The group of 3 continued to walk the trees as Naruto took in the sights. He saw nothing had changed at all since he was last here. Hey, look, it's boss, someone said, and Naruto turned around to see Konohamaru and his group right along with Tsunade, Shizune, and Sakura. Hey Konohamaru, how you been? Naruto asked as he ruffled his hair. Konohamaru grinned as he hugged his rival. I've been good, he responded, making Naruto smile. Hey brat, you've grown up. Not to mention your fashion sense has really improved, Tsunade said while Naruto grinned like mad. He brushed a hand through his hair and smiled. Well, I thought it deserved a change, Naruto said, making Tsunade nod. It was then that they heard chuckling which made Naruto and Jiraiya gulp. Tsunade turned to the woman next to Naruto and widened her eyes. Finally. I finally get to see you. How have you been, Tsunade? Please come over here so I can talk with you about something, Kushina said, sharpening her blade while Tsunade backed away. Shizune gasped while Sakura raised an eyebrow. Who's this? And why is she holding her sword like that? Sakura asked while everyone backed away from the ki that was penetrating the air, making it thick. 2 years. I've waited for 2 years to see you, Tsunade, and I just want to catch up, right? Kushina asked while Tsunade turned to Jiraiya, who simply bowed to her and wished her luck. But how? Why, you should be dead. Well, that's an interesting story for another time. Now then, you with the pink hair, please move right now, Kushina said, advancing on Tsunade while Sakura got a tick mark. Hey, listen, you can't talk to Tsunade-sama like that, Sakura said while Tsunade, Jiraiya, Naruto and Shizune were mentally yelling for Sakura to shut her trap for once. Kushina turned to Sakura, who steeled her gaze at the redhead, narrowed her eyes. Sakura-chan, maybe you should get out of the way now, Naruto said while Sakura gazed over at him. Shut it, Naruto baka. I don't need your advice to handle this, Sakura said, and the air just got colder around her. Kushina chuckled even more as she found a secondary target. You're Sakura, aren't you? Kushina asked, and Sakura nodded, still locking eyes with the woman. That's right, she said while Kushina took a deep breath and cracked her neck. Okay, that's all I wanted to know, Kushina said as she unsheathed her sword. The entire village watched the two square off, and Kushina smiled. Then I'll have to tell you this. In my presence, don't call my son an idiot, and if you ever hit him again like I've been told, then I'll kill you, Kushina said in the simplest tone, which made Sakura gulp, and she realized that her life was in danger. Now then, as I was saying, Tsunade, tell me why you didn't tell Naruto about his heritage, and tell me why he's not living at our house like I told you and Sarutobi, and tell me why you didn't help raise him like you and Jiraiya said you would, Kushina said while Tsunade backed away. She turned to Shizune for help, but she was on the other side of the road, and Tsunade gasped before turning back. And now KK Kushina, I don't know how you're back, but let's see, calm down and talk this out, okay? Tsunade asked while Kushina stopped walking. I just met you, but the time for talk is over. Now is the time for punishment. Jiraiya received his and now you will receive yours. You can run, but I will catch you, Kushina said, and on that note Tsunade added chakra to her feet and jumped off, but she was quickly brought back by a chain attached to her leg as it slowly pulled her back. See, I said you could run, but now you're so kind as to stay. How noble of you, Tsunade. Now then, please let's go somewhere and talk, Kushina said as she walked away and into a small alleyway. Tsunade's teeth chattered against each other as she was dragged away. Shizune, help me, Tsunade yelled out, but Shizune gulped and bowed. Forgive me, Tsunade-sama, Shizune said quietly as the small darkness overwhelmed the alleyway. Ah, Tsunade yelled, making the entire village shiver. Naruto, who is that woman? Sakura asked, trying to stop her body from shaking while Naruto sighed and rubbed the back of his head along with Shizune and Jiraiya, who were praying to Kami for Tsunade's safety. She's my mother. Kushina Uzumaki, or the Red Death of Konoha, Naruto said, and Sakura widened her eyes. She's way out of my league, Sakura thought as the various screams of Tsunade filled the village. Yep, Naruto was back in Konoha and he brought a big surprise to them. Tsunade sat behind her desk rubbing her forehead of the giant lump on her head, while standing behind her desk was Sakura with a smaller lump, Jiraiya and Naruto along with Shizune. Well, that was a nice talk, right, Tsunade? Kushina asked, and Tsunade cried a little more. She had to hate her life right now. This just so wasn't fair. Tsunade turned to Naruto and narrowed her eyes at the blonde. It's just one headache after another with you. You aren't even back for 10 minutes and I want you to leave again, Tsunade thought before finally deciding to talk. She really wanted to get off that little nightmare she had a few minutes ago. Well, that aside, and the complete shock of seeing Kushina, I guess it's good to see you, brat, Tsunade said, and Naruto nodded in agreement with her. He was more than happy to see his village again. It's good to see you too, Ba-chan, Naruto responded, and Tsunade grew a tick mark on her herd. It seems he still couldn't give her the respect she wanted, but somewhere in her heart she was happy that he hadn't changed in the least over those years. Well, his attire was an improvement. He really looked quite capable in that entire black outfit. So I hope you haven't been wasting his time, Jiraiya, Tsunade said, which made the Toad Sage scoff at his old teammate. Please, do you really think so low of me, Tsunade? The brat knows more than a thing or two, Jiraiya said, and in all honesty he wasn't kidding. He knew that if Naruto would fight someone, then it would be quite a shock of what the blonde could do. After all, he was trained under Kushina and himself, so it had to really count for something. That's right, Ba-chan. I've gotten wicked strong. I might even be able to take you on, Naruto said, making Kushina giggle while Tsunade and Sakura rolled their eyes. They could see that the blonde was still confident as ever. Yes, well, it's really good to see you confident. So Jiraiya, what rank should we give Naruto? I don't know how well he's improved, and keeping him a genin doesn't seem right, so what do you suggest we do? Tsunade asked, and the sage thought it over before turning to see Sakura and Naruto looking at him. Yeah, that could work. Well, it's important to have teamwork, so why don't you have Naruto and Sakura fight against one of your jonin? Jiraiya asked, and Tsunade's grin got bigger before she closed her eyes. I see. Well, I guess our volunteer was listening in, Tsunade said, and immediately there was a knock on the door. Everyone turned around to see Shikamaru and Temari come through the door, and it took the Nara a bit of time to recognize the blonde in front of him. Hey, you're Naruto. Man, it's good to see you. How have you been? Shikamaru asked, and Naruto smirked as he walked towards the next Nara clan head. I've been good, Shikamaru. How have you been? Still lazy? Naruto asked, and Shikamaru rubbed the back of his head with a sigh. Hey, this job is troublesome and I still don't like it. I'd rather be watching the clouds, Shikamaru said, making everyone in the room sweat drop. To Kushina, it only reminded her remembering how Yoshino was with most lazy boys. It was then that Shikamaru pointed to Temari. And I'm sure you remember this person, Shikamaru said, and Naruto turned to her. The blonde grinned and nodded. Only one girl I know has that hairstyle, right, Temari? Naruto asked, making Temari smile at the blonde. He really did change from the weird kid she remembered back during the Chunin exams. It's good to see you too, Naruto. It really shows that you've changed if you remember me, Temari said, and soon everyone heard the sound of some clap and turned to see Tsunade. I'll leave the greetings for later. Right now the person you want to fight is expecting you, Tsunade said, and Naruto nodded. Then tell Kakashi-sensei that I'm ready to have some fun when he comes in, Naruto said, making Tsunade widen her eyes. That only served to make Kushina giggle. She hadn't only been teaching Kenjutsu to Naruto, and she could hardly wait to see him fight with all she showed him. How did you know that? Tsunade asked, and Naruto grinned while Sakura looked at him like he just grew a second head. I told you I got stronger. So why don't you send him inside? Naruto asked, and Tsunade waved her hand. Soon Kakashi came inside just like Naruto thought, and while his gaze was apathetic he still held a small amount of surprise, but then he looked to see the redhead across from Naruto, and Kakashi gasped so much that it made him drop his precious book. Why you're, but how are you even? It's impossible, Kakashi said, making Kushina giggle. It's a real interesting story. It's something Naru-kun should tell you, not me, Kushina said, and suddenly Naruto felt everyone stare at him with all intent on knowing what the blonde did, while Naruto glared at his mother. Ka-san, that's not funny, Naruto said, while Kushina just kept her amused grin on her face. However, it didn't take long for Kakashi to turn to Naruto and picked up his book. Well, you are different. Well then, are you any good? Kakashi asked, and Naruto smiled. I sure am, Dadbayo. Oh, but before we get into it, I thought you'd might like a gift. I have no need for it, and even if I did, then my mother would beat me to a pulp. So here you go, Naruto said, reaching into his pouch as he took out a book and gave it to the Jonin. Kakashi widened his eyes as he cried tears of joy. It's not possible, Kakashi said as he felt like he was in the presence of Kami himself as he opened the book. While Jiraiya grinned. Yes, that's right. It is a work of art after all. No one could understand how magnificent it is, Jiraiya said, and Tsunade would have glared at him, but something worse was watching him. Jiraiya, why does my Naru-kun have that book? Kushina asked, and the Toad Sage gulped before turning around to see Kushina just smiling, but anyone who knew Kushina also knew that this smile was a terrible thing. I don't know, Jiraiya said as Kushina grabbed his shoulder. Then let me tell you something outside right now. Kushina said as she dragged a screaming Jiraiya away while everyone sighed. Tsunade chose to ignore it and sighed again. Kakashi, that's enough, Tsunade said, and Kakashi closed the book just as easily as he opened it. Well then, I can't wait to see how you and Sakura still work together, Naruto, but you must be tired, so we'll give you a chance to rest, then we'll fight it out, Kakashi said, and Naruto rose an eyebrow. Huh, I'm fine. I've had plenty of rest and I'm ready to go, Naruto said, and Sakura nodded in agreement with him. Kakashi turned to them and raised an eyebrow. Nonsense, you should just rest for a bit. I'll see you later, Kakashi told them and immediately shunshined off while everyone tried to contemplate what happened. He seemed to be in a hurry, Shizune said, making the obvious known. Can't wait to read that book. Sigh. Well, I'm gonna go now, Shikamaru said as he and Tamari left the room, but not before seeing Kushina come back through the room, and on the floor was a beaten up Jiraiya. Well, since Kakashi-sensei ran off, I guess you have the time then, I guess you have the time. So Naruto, do you want to look around the village? Sakura asked, but Naruto sighed. Sorry Sakura, but I've got some things to do. Like moving into my house, right Tsunade-bachan? Naruto asked, and Tsunade sighed. She nodded and took out a map. Sarutobi-sensei left instructions to where the house was, and you should. Tsunade, do you really think I wouldn't know where my own house is? Come on Sochi, let's get you settled in like you should have been, Kushina said, wrapping her body around Naruto's arm and dragging him off while Sakura glared. As a mother always that free-loving with her son? Sakura asked, and Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Jealous? Tsunade asked, and Sakura huffed and rolled her eyes. Not in the least Tsunade-sama, Sakura said to her master, which made Tsunade giggle at the thought of Sakura being jealous of Naruto's own mother. It was a strange concept to even think that. With Kushina and Naruto, Kushina continued to drag Naruto towards their house. The blonde noticed the vacant Uchiha compound as they passed it. He narrowed his eyes and sighed, but didn't dwell on it long. He had other responsibilities and Sasuke wasn't one of them at the moment. It took a little while, but Kushina took Naruto into the woods, and after a few minutes they both came up to a house. It wasn't very large, but it wasn't small either. It seems to be the perfect blend of normal and exquisite. Not over the top, but definitely not ordinary. It's nice, Ka-san. We even have a pond, Naruto said, and Kushina nodded. She came up to the house and it showed seals preventing anyone from going inside. I'd do it, but you should do it, Naru-kun. Bite your thumb and trace it over the seal, Kushina told him, and Naruto nodded. The blonde bit his thumb and traced it over the seal. The seal glowed and then faded. Quickly a large barrier appeared over the house and immediately vanished, allowing Naruto and Kushina their access to the house. Kushina opened the door and both walked inside. For Kushina there was a small air of déjà vu for her. While Naruto walked around the house, he wondered how it was so clean when the house didn't allow anyone inside, but he'd figure that out later. He saw his mother looking around with a longing look, and the blonde frowned. Are you alright, Ka-san? Naruto asked, and Kushina gave a gentle smile. I'm alright. Just reminiscing is all, Kushina said, and before long she stared to give Naruto a grand tour of the entire place, which he should have known already, but it hardly mattered anymore. While Kushina showed him around, Naruto made a cage bunshin to pack the things in his old apartment and move them into his house. The clone nodded and left the room, leaving the mother and son alone. Well, everything seems to be in place. Nothing's changed at all. Well, Sochi, I guess I'll show you the rooms, Kushina said, and the blonde walked away with her. They walked up the stairs and came inside the master bedroom. The bed was really big, at least for two people to sleep comfortably. This should be your room now, Sochi. We have a guest room, so I'll just sleep there, Kushina said, and Naruto shook his head. No way, Ka-san, I can't let you do that. You should just stay in here with me, Naruto said, and Kushina raised an eyebrow. She gave a small hint of a blush, but didn't know why she was. Are you sure about that? Kushina asked, and Naruto glared at her. I don't mind if you do. Besides, you slept with me for 2 years before this, so why should this be any different? Naruto asked, and Kushina thought that over. She wasn't sure how to answer that. She mainly did that because she always loved to hug her son, and she'd rather with her son that Jiraiya, since no place had beds for three, and truth be told she was kind of used to it. Well, I suppose it's alright. You can take that half and I'll take this half of the bed, Kushina said, and Naruto nodded. They each sat on opposite ends of the bed and started to unseal their clothes and things to put away in the various shelves and drawers. So you're finally taking initiative after 2 years. How nice for you and slow. I thought you were never going to try anything, Kyuubi suddenly said, and Naruto narrowed his eyes. I'm not trying anything. And what the hell do you mean by taking initiative? This is my mother, damn it. Naruto said, and Kyuubi chuckled at his container, acting flustered. Please, brat, mother or not, she a woman, and like any other woman she has needs, got that. As far as I'm concerned, she's just related to you if nothing else. What are you so worried about? Kyuubi asked, and Naruto sighed. He looked over his shoulder and gazed at his mother combing her hair. The blonde gulped as he now realized the consequences of his actions. He was just trying to be polite to his mother, but now it turns into something like this. With all his training with the Shinigami, the blonde hadn't the time to ever try and act on his small feelings for his mother. Somewhere he was happy for that, but in the deeper places of his mind he wasn't happy at all. He wasn't sure what he wanted from his mother, but he knew she wouldn't give it to him, or worse, that she would completely reject him, so Naruto kept it all to himself. He at least felt that was for the best. Great, Kyuubi. Now I have to think like this, Naruto said while Kyuubi rolled his eyes at his container. He really wished that the blonde wasn't so damn cheeky. Whatever, brat. Just don't go insane with the closeness, or you're really gonna have something to worry about then, Kyuubi said, and Naruto sighed. Naru-kun, did you hear me? Kushina suddenly asked, and the blonde turned to his mother. I'm sorry, what happened, Ka-san? Naruto asked, and Kushina began again with a slight worry on her face. I said that I'm going to cook us some lunch, so would you like anything? She asked, and Naruto nodded since he was feeling hungry too. So on that note, Kushina got up from her side of the bed and walked away from the room, leaving Naruto inside. Great. She's totally gonna be worried about me now, Naruto said, and Kyuubi chuckled at his container unfortunate acts. Sigh, great, now what do I do? Naruto wondered, but then his clone came back with a scroll for all his stuff, and the blonde took it. He closed his eyes and concentrated. Kage Bunshin Jutsu, Naruto said in thought, and immediately two clones came out and started to put things away while Naruto walked down the stairs. The blonde walked out into the yard and took in the nice scenery for a bit. Well, I better get started, Naruto said, taking off his wrist guards, revealing the seal on his hand. He bit his thumb and traced blood over it. Kuchio's no jutsu, Naruto yelled, and immediately Shin appeared behind the blonde and narrowed his eyes at his summoner. So you're ready to continue? The Shinigami asked, and Naruto nodded. He took out his sword and took his mother's taijutsu stance. He quickly saw his sword glow in the same white light that he had seen so many times with its strange glow. The blonde gripped his sword and concentrated all his chakra into it. The sword glowed brighter, making Naruto shield his eyes while the Shinigami watched. Focus, Naruto-sama. Using spiritual fire requires a great deal on concentration, Shin said to the blonde. For those 2 years, he had taught Naruto how to become the human Shinigami that Shin said he would be. Naruto had learned many techniques that involved his sword thanks to Kushina and Shin. In terms of what Shin told him, then there was the one scroll that Shin gave Naruto that showed Naruto every technique he would need to learn in order to be a human Shinigami. Naruto had learned about 5 to 7 different techniques due to their difficulty, but he had a lot more to do. Naruto gritted his teeth as his sword shined even more. He huffed as before he dropped the sword, and the glow immediately stopped. The blonde cursed and looked at his hands, which had small burns on them. Damn, that hurt, Naruto said while the Shinigami nodded. Spirit flames weren't a joke. They burned a lot more than regular fire, and while it wasn't as hot, it still hurt when it engulfed you just like any normal fire. Keep at it. You have to do it, Shin said, and Naruto picked up his sword. He gripped it and allowed it to glow again. I'll get this down. I know I have to, Naruto said before dropping his sword again from the burning on his hands. Kuso. Naruto yelled out before he tried again. A few hours later, Sakura sighed as she stayed at the gate where they were supposed to meet up. She expected the lateness from Kakashi, but Naruto was a new one on her. He also seemed slightly distant. She had noticed that one time when he didn't call her, Sakura-chan, like he always did. It unnerved the pink-haired Kunoichi slightly that maybe Naruto had changed too much. Hey Sakura! Someone yelled, and the Kunoichi looked up to see Naruto walking towards her. His hands seemed slightly burned, but he bandaged them up just as fine. You're late, and what happened to your hands? She asked, and Naruto grinned before sheepishly rubbing the back of his head. It's nothing major. Is Kakashi-sensei not here yet? Naruto asked, and Sakura shook her head. No, he isn't, she responded, and Naruto narrowed his eyes as he leaned on the gate. Meanwhile, Sakura took in the blonde's appearance and could tell that he looked better in black than anything else. She would even say that he was good-looking. Naruto, on the other hand, was thinking about how to perfect his sword techniques, along with him trying to figure out the feelings for his mother that he tried to suppress over the years, which was difficult due to Kyuubi's ramblings. Hey, I'm just speaking the truth. Don't put this on me, Kyuubi responded while Naruto sighed in thought. Soon a poof made them jump as they turned around to face their sensei. Yo, Kakashi said while Naruto narrowed his eyes at his sensei. Keep that up, Kakashi-sensei, and one day it will be the biggest mistake of your life, Naruto said as he walked into the training ground, but what was weird was the fact that Naruto's eyes showed a small shimmer of death on Kakashi, which made the Jonin mentally gulp. Behind some trees were Kushina, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shizune, decided to watch them all fight. So do you think that Naruto can beat Kakashi? Tsunade asked, and Kushina giggled. He's my son. Of course he can, and I bet that he'll get him in the most unexpected way to any of you, Kushina said, and with that everyone decided to pay attention and watch with interest what she was talking about. Naruto and Sakura stood across from Kakashi while the Jonin held up two bells. Naruto narrowed his eyes while Sakura smirked while putting on her gloves. Alright, we're here. Now then, rules are the same as last time. Come at me with the intent to kill or you won't get these bells, Kakashi said, making Naruto and Sakura nod. The blonde sighed and cracked his knuckles. He couldn't wait for what he had planned for Kakashi. We know that already, Dadbeo, Naruto said, and Sakura nodded with him. Don't think little of us, Kakashi-sensei, or you're gonna get hurt, Sakura said, making Kakashi give an eye smile. We'll see, Kakashi responded as he closed his eyes. The wind blowed around them all, making their hair sway. Kakashi grabbed his headband and lifted it up. Now we'll make this a little harder, Kakashi said to them, with Naruto and Sakura grinning like mad. Alright, Kakashi, if we're going that far then I will too, Naruto said as he closed his eyes. Sakura raised an eyebrow, and so did Kakashi, while Kushina and Jiraiya grinned, but Tsunade and Shizune were confused. What's he doing? Tsunade asked while Kushina grinned. Don't worry about that and just watch, Kushina said as Naruto opened his eyes. They didn't change and there was no special feature about them, but the blonde smirked anyway while the air around him became cold. Naruto's ki instantly raised, making Sakura gulp. Ready, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked as he grabbed his sword. His love to do this to people. It was known as the Shi no Shinsen, which was taught to him by the Shinigami over his 2-year training period. It was a technique that more or less didn't rely on ki, but enhanced it to the point of the person looking at it was almost staring at their own death. Naruto remembered his own experience with it also. Flashback. Naruto stood in the middle of the field and turned to see Shin facing him. The blonde would learn the first technique to becoming a Shinigami, which was to have the presence of one. Alright, Naruto-sama, I'm going to show you the first technique as a Shinigami. Keep in mind that you needn't be afraid too much, but I'll try and bring it to a low level if I can, Shin said and used the gaze on Naruto. The blonde widened his eyes and immediately fell to the ground. His breathing hitched and his body trembled. He hadn't felt anything like this since Zabuza. Shin soon stopped and Naruto breathed easily. Damn it. I felt like you were going to kill me for a second, Naruto said and Shin nodded. That's the first step. To be a Shinigami is to appear to have the presence of one. Never forget that, Shin said and the blonde nodded. It took Naruto 3 weeks to be able to handle the technique and about 5 weeks to be able to use it effectively. End flashback. Kakashi's body trembled before Naruto lessened the gaze a bit for him to at least breathe easily. Something wrong, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked before Kakashi snapped out of his stupor. He looked at Naruto and narrowed his eyes like his mind just registered the blonde as a full-on threat. No, it's nothing. Begin, Kakashi said and Naruto quickly erased the distance between him and Kakashi, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. Sakura widened her eyes and even Kakashi did also. I'm taking those bells, Naruto said as he aimed for a punch at Kakashi, but the Jonin somehow managed to block it as he sent a kick at Naruto's face, but the blonde only chuckled and in a flash of speed Naruto punched Kakashi, making the Jonin skid back a few feet. Kushina and Jiraiya grinned while Shizune and Tsunade showed utter surprise. They didn't expect Kakashi to get hit so fast. Naruto cracked his knuckles and glared at Kakashi while the Jonin rubbed his side. Here I come, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said as he blurred out of sight. Kakashi widened his eyes as Naruto appeared behind him. He's so fast, Kakashi thought, and Naruto was in amazement as well. He never had such a chance to go this fast before. His mother's training was extreme, but it got the job done. Naruto tried to grab the bells, but Kakashi spun his body and quickly turned away from Naruto. It was then that he dodged another punch from a clone, making the Jonin gasp. When did he make a Kage Bunshin? Kakashi wondered as Naruto and his clone backflipped away from him. Hey Sakura, don't you want a crack at Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked, which broke Sakura out of her stupor of watching the fight. She could barely see Naruto as it was so when the blonde called her she was surprised, but she could admire the blonde later. Alright, here I come, Kakashi-sensei, Sakura said, but before she could move into action Kakashi disappeared, making Sakura curse. Damn it, where'd he go? Sakura wondered while Naruto chuckled. This would be so much fun after all. In Suna, 2 members wearing red cloaks were coming up to the village and both looked inside it. They narrowed their eyes and grinned as they appeared. So this is where the Ikibi Jinchuriki lives, one with blonde hair said while the other spoke in a gruff voice. That's right. Deidara, are you sure that what you have in that pouch is enough for him? He asked while the other grinned before putting his hands in his pouch. You don't need to worry about that, Sasori, my man, Deidara said while Sasori rolled his eyes. Deidara took some clay in his hands and threw it at the ground, creating a giant bird. Deidara jumped on the giant clay bird and flew into the air to infiltrate the sand village. Meanwhile, the Kage was in his office signing some documents before he turned and looked at the sky. He narrowed his eyes and instantly got up from his seat. It was then that his former sensei, Baki, came through the door. Lord Kage, is everything alright? Baki asked as the Kage stood to his feet. It's fine. Baki, I'm going out for a bit, he said and Baki bowed. Yes, Gaara-sama, Baki said as Gaara walked out of the room, leaving his sensei in the dark about what was going to happen. Gaara grabbed his gourd and stepped out on the platform. He saw a strange bird in the air and narrowed his eyes when he saw someone jump down in front of him. Infiltration success, Deidara said with a grin, but that was quickly shot down when he looked at Gaara. The Ikibi Jinchuriki glared at Deidara. So I've been spotted, Deidara said while Gaara's sand started to swirl around in a frantic manner. There are no birds like that in my desert, Gaara said while Deidara grinned. I suppose not. Well then I'll just show you why art is an explosion, Deidara yelled out as the cage of sand got ready for a fight. Back in Konoha, both Sakura and Naruto found Kakashi and were currently fighting the Jonin with everything they had, or at least Sakura was. Naruto still didn't use his sword and was in for a straight taijutsu fight with Kakashi. Get back here, Kakashi-sensei, and fight! Naruto yelled out as he chased Kakashi. The Jonin grinned and threw a kunai at the blonde, making him dodge before his field of vision was shattered. Kakashi used that opportunity to dash off, but he didn't get far before Sakura nearly punched his face as she rocketed into the ground, causing a loud tremor while Kakashi's sweat dropped. She really is like Tsunade-sama, Kakashi thought before he dodged a kick from Naruto. The blonde smiled and backflipped, which revealed a clone behind him that went for a time difference attack. Kakashi narrowed his eyes before countering the punch and kicking the clone in the stomach, making it dispel. Kakashi backed away from the two of his students and wiped his brow. Well, that's good for both of you. Your taijutsu is excellent, but now for your next lesson. Ninjutsu, Kakashi said as he went through his hand signs. Sakura and Naruto narrowed their eyes as the Jonin finished. Sakura, get back, Naruto said, and Sakura wasn't sure what the blonde was going to do, but Naruto was ready for something. The blonde did his own hand signs while the seal on his hand glowed slightly. Naruto grabbed his sword and it shined as Naruto charged at Kakashi. Naruto, what are you doing? Sakura yelled out while Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Shizune narrowed their eyes. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, Kakashi yelled out, sending the blazing fireball at Naruto. The blonde grinned as his sword slammed into the fireball. The collision was intense as Sakura and Kakashi stared in awe of Naruto slashing through the fire. Naruto continued at Kakashi, surprising the Jonin before he backflipped away. His Sharingan was working overtime to analyze what just happened to his ninjutsu. Naruto's sword shined and the blonde turned to Kakashi. His gaze was cold, but still full of some warmth. Like it, Kakashi-sensei. I call that move Shin no Mai, Dance of Death. As you know, Kakashi-sensei, fire is a living, breathing thing. It spreads, it consumes, and like us, it dies. I just made my sword the cause of that is all, Naruto said as Kakashi narrowed his eyes. He tried to feel the chakra around Naruto's sword, but it felt indeterminable. He had never seen something like it before anywhere. Kushina, did you teach Naruto that? Jiraiya asked, but Kushina was just as confused as the Toad Sage. No, I didn't. Where he learned it I don't know, but it's awesome, Databane. Kushina said, getting excited by watching her son. Tsunade, Shizune and Jiraiya sweat dropped at her excitement. Meanwhile, Sakura stared at Naruto while the blonde ran at Kakashi. The copy shinobi dodged a slash from the blonde, but Naruto pivoted his foot and planted it into Kakashi's side. Kakashi winced, but didn't dwell on it long before he rebounded and landed on his feet. Not bad, Naruto. You've grown, Kakashi said before he dodged a heavy punch from Sakura which caused a crater in the ground. Don't count me out yet, sensei, Sakura said with a grin on face. Naruto smirked at his teammate before he sighed and took his mother's stance. Well, since I have my sword out, I think I'll use it, Naruto said while Kakashi closed his eyes for a minute and smiled. They've both grown so much. Especially you, Naruto Uzumaki, Kakashi thought as he opened his eyes. Not bad for a good fight, Kakashi said before he saw two Naruto clones burst out of the trees as they charged him. Kakashi took more note of the blue sphere in their hands as the distance between him and them lessened. Udama Rasengan, the two Narutos yelled as they tried to slam the ball into Kakashi's body, but the Jonin dodged the Rasengan as he jumped into the air. What he didn't expect was Naruto to use his speed to appear above Kakashi as the blonde began to spin violently. Uzu no Fukusu. Dai Uzumaki Akari, Whirlpool Revenge. Great Maelstrom Rage, Naruto yelled, and Kakashi could have sworn that even with his Sharingan, but he was seeing water dance around Naruto with his sword before the blonde dashed for him in the air as they hit the ground, causing a bit explosion. Sakura covered her eyes before surveying the landscape. Kushina smiled at her son's accomplishment while the blonde appeared. He huffed with a smile on his face before he turned to see Kakashi on the water with a large slash through his flak jacket. Phew, that was close. If I had been a second off, he really wouldn't killed me with that move, Kakashi said to himself while he went through more hand signs that Sakura and Naruto couldn't make out. Suiden. Suiryuden no Jutsu, Kakashi yelled out, creating a large water dragon and sent it at Sakura and Naruto. Both cursed as they jumped out of the way as water flooded the entire area. Naruto and Sakura narrowly escaped the water as they headed into the trees inside. It was a diversion. Kakashi had run off hiding and they had no way of finding him. Naruto huffed as he laid on the ground next to a tree. Well, Kakashi-sensei really does live up to his reputation, Naruto said, and Sakura had to agree with him. But how are we going to beat him? Even if you've improved in nearly everything, we still can't match him, Sakura said, and Naruto narrowed his eyes. I can match him, Naruto said, and Sakura widened her eyes, but Naruto didn't leave her the time to be impressed. I just don't have the same experience that he does. If I did, then we could take him on easily, Naruto said while Sakura widened her eyes again. What training did Naruto do to become like this? So what do we do? Sakura asked, and Naruto smiled a bit. Well, let's see. My taijutsu is about equal to his thanks to my mother's training. He's better at using ninjutsu than any of us. He's smarter than Shikamaru. His sense of smell is better than Kiba's. He has the Sharingan and a lot more experience than we do. Frankly, the only thing we have more than him is your medical ninjutsu and my chakra reserves, Naruto assessed before Sakura pointed. What about your sword? Are you better than him at that? Sakura asked, and Naruto looked at his sword for a few minutes. Well, Ka-san told me that Kakashi-sensei did no kenjutsu at one point. I'd say I'm better than him since we haven't seen him pick up a sword in who knows how long, Naruto said, and Sakura sighed. When you sound like that, it's like we can't win, Sakura told the blonde, but Naruto's grin got bigger. Now, I didn't say that, Sakura. I might have been a goofball when we were younger, but thanks to Ero-sennin and Ka-san I've learned a few things, Naruto said and whispered into Sakura's ear. The pink kunoichi widened her eyes before she stood to her feet and smiled at the blonde. Naruto, you really are the #1 hyperactive, knucklehead ninja, Sakura said, and Naruto stood to his feet. He quickly sheathed his sword and patted Sakura on the shoulder. Let's go get those bells, Naruto said, and Sakura nodded. Meanwhile, those watching were very impressed with Naruto and Sakura. They've really learned a lot. Still think he's a genin? Jiraiya asked, and Tsunade scoffed before turning to him. Genin. The brat could be Jonin if he had the experience down. Whether he gets the bells or not, he's already the best Chunin by far, Tsunade said while Kushina shushed them. It's going to get good now, Databane, Kushina said, and everyone turned their attention back to the woods. Kakashi sighed as he rested near a tree. His outfit was worse for wear and he was tired. The Jonin had overused the Sharingan and he was losing chakra fast. He then went into his pouch, but shook his head. No, I can't. It's not easy to read and stop them like last time, but I'm dying to see what it happens, Kakashi said as he sat in the forest. He stayed there for a few more minutes before he smelled Sakura and Naruto coming at him. Great. Looks like the fight's back on, Kakashi said as Naruto came out of the trees with Sakura right behind him. Naruto charged at Kakashi and tried to punch him, but Kakashi dodged the hit and tried to hit Naruto, but the blonde grabbed his fist and held it tight while Sakura held his other hand. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at why it was like this before Naruto grinned. You Kakashi-sensei, the boss liked to start cool and end things with a bang, the blonde said, and Kakashi widened his eyes. Naruto. He wouldn't dare, Kakashi said before he heard a sound. Kai. Naruto yelled and a massive explosion came across the forest, making Kushina smile while Jiraiya sighed. Tsunade would really have some work to do when it was all over. Naruto and Sakura walked up to a passed-out Kakashi and smiled. This was a good day indeed. 1 hour later, Kakashi groaned and rubbed his head as he came to. He had a splitting headache and turned to see Naruto and Sakura grinning at him. Kakashi checked his side and saw that the bells were gone. Naruto and Sakura held the two and smiled. "That's your defeat, Kakashi-sensei," Naruto said, and Sakura nodded with him. "Naruto, that was a nice trick. To mask us with clones to get close to Kakashi-sensei, then have them explode. That was amazing. I can't believe you thought of that on the spot," Sakura said, and Naruto grinned while Kakashi slowly got up. "Bakuden Bunshin, explosion clone. I never would have suspected that. Not since Itachi anyway," Kakashi said, keeping the last part to himself. "Well, I can honestly tell you that it worked out quite well," Naruto said as the others joined in. "Only 'cause I taught it to you, Sochi, and you performed it magnificently," Kushina said, wrapping Naruto in a hug that made the blonde blush from his mother's touch while Tsunade and Shizune tended to everyone's wounds. "So Kakashi, in your opinion, how did they do?" Tsunade asked while Kakashi looked from Naruto to Sakura and back. "They performed very well. I can honestly see their growth. Sakura is very unique and Naruto was amazing. With experience, these two will go far. I honestly think that Naruto should be Chunin mid-Jonin if he had the experience," Kakashi said, and Tsunade nodded. It was just as she thought. Kushina was really training her son, but Tsunade, Kakashi and Jiraiya were still wondering how she was back, and they would ask her or Naruto sometime, but now wasn't that time for that. "Sakura, that was a marvelous job as my apprentice. You performed nicely and made me proud," Tsunade said, and Sakura bowed with her thanks. While Tsunade turned to Naruto. "Uzumaki Naruto. You're still a brat, but I'm impressed with that fight. You really had been training for those 2 years. Now, based on a lot of things that I've seen, I know you're no genin. Heck, you're almost hardly a chunin, expect for the lack of experience, so until you gain more, I'd like to promote you from genin to chunin as of today." "Congratulations, brat," Tsunade said, and the blonde's eyes gleamed. He then jumped up and down while everyone else smiled at him. It was then that Kushina got a gleam in her eyes before she snaked her arm around Naruto's neck. "It's time to celebrate, Databane. We're all going out for ramen and Jiraiya's paying," Kushina yelled while Jiraiya widened his eyes and dropped his jaw. "I'll attend that party," Tsunade said, laughing, as did everyone else in the field as Naruto looked at the starry sky. "How was that, Shin?" Naruto asked as he walked off the field with everyone else. Meanwhile, the Shinigami made a small appearance as he watched Naruto and the others leave. "Very interesting, Naruto-sama, but you still have a lot to learn." "Still, I'm decently impressed," Shin said as he disappeared from view. Still, no one knew what happened in Suna nor how it would spread the name of Naruto Uzumaki around the entire world. Kushina woke up and rubbed her head. Everyone had stayed out late since Jiraiya treated them all to ramen, which in the end left him with barely any money at all. When Kushina had learned from Naruto how much money Jiraiya had hoarded off her son, she made it her personal mission to have Jiraiya pay back that amount to Naruto. It amazed the woman that even when he treated them, he still wasn't close to finishing his debt. The Uzumaki woman soon turned her head to see that Naruto wasn't on his side of the bed, and she frowned. It wasn't like him to get up before her, but she chalked that up to just wanting to see the sun rise in the morning. Kushina gave a slow yawn and leaned up from the bed. "I wonder where Naru-kun is," she said, and before long she got her answer when she saw the door open. The sight she saw made the woman blush as she saw Naruto come into the room shirtless while he wore a towel over his head. He was wearing some boxer shorts, so it was mostly fine, but not for Kushina. The woman wanted to avert her eyes from the completely fit body that her son had. She felt herself entranced by his form as she looked at his arm muscles as well as his chest, with his body being so much more developed. Kushina had never seen her son in such detail since he always had some form of clothing on when they slept, but Kushina wasn't thinking about that at the moment. She figured he had just come from the shower as the water dripping down his body was something to go by. It was probably the first time she had seen her son as more than a son at that moment. She saw a handsome man that she was sharing a bed with apparently. "I've never noticed it before, but Naru-kun is so. Kushina caught herself and widened her eyes. Immediately she averted her gaze out of embarrassment and slight shame. She was his mother. This was so wrong. There was no way she could think something like this. Naruto watched his mother out of confusion for a few minutes before he walked up to her. Her sudden behavior worried him slightly and the blonde wondered if she was alright. He might have been confused about his slightly growing affection for his mother, but he was still her son and he figured he could still worry about her. Ka-san, are you okay? Your face is red, Naruto said, suddenly invading her space and placing his hand on her forehead, giving Kushina a frontal view of her son. The redhead mentally gulped and quickly stood to her feet, surprising Naruto slightly. I'm fine, Naru-kun. I'll go make breakfast now, Kushina said as she immediately grabbed her robe and wrapped it around her waist. Having done the action, she left the room as Naruto heard the rapid steps downstairs, making the blonde more confused. What's wrong with her? Naruto wondered, but he didn't dwell on it long as he sat on the bed, but the whole thing went unnoticed by Kyuubi, who was grinning like mad. I knew I was right. Oh, this is gonna be so interesting. I hope the brat is prepared for this, Kyuubi thought before staying silent. Naruto sighed as he put on his black shirt and black pants. He opened his closet and took out his black shoes. He also covered the seal on his right arm with his wrist guards and strapped his sword to his back as he walked down the stairs. Naruto saw his mother cooking in an apron and the blonde gulped. He heard her humming a soft tune as she set the table. He smelled the breakfast she made and sat down, though as soon as he did his mother went silent, making the blonde nervous. Ka-san, is something bothering you? Naruto asked and Kushina sighed. She tried to forget the imagine in her head a few minutes ago, but it was very hard. She hadn't been with anyone for 2 years and she wondered about that. Not to mention she also felt that she was betraying Minato by having these feelings. She had to admit that for being half his age, Naruto was a lot more fit than Minato. Plus the whisker marks made him more cute. I'm fine, Naru-kun. Here, eat your breakfast, Kushina said as she avoided looking directly at Naruto's face. She couldn't bear the thought of seeing her son's piercing gaze on her, which Naruto was doing. He seemed genuinely concerned, but he decided to stop and eat his breakfast, which was rather more tense than pleasant. Neither Naruto nor Kushina could talk about anything that seemed of interest. Naruto because he was concerned about his mother and wanted to know what was wrong, and Kushina for the less than motherly feelings she was starting to have for her son. After the intense breakfast, Kushina went upstairs to get dressed while Naruto sat on the couch. He thought about his mother and why she was acting like she was, but he didn't get the chance to do that long as the doorbell rang, distracting Naruto from his thoughts. The blonde got up from the couch and opened the door. He saw Jiraiya standing there and wondered why he was here. Aro-senin, what's up? Naruto asked while Jiraiya sighed and rubbed the back of his head. Well, Tsunade wants to see you and Kushina right now. She sounded pretty serious, so I think you'd better go, Jiraiya said in a serious tone, and Naruto nodded. At that time Kushina came down the stairs in some blue jeans and red sleeveless shirt. Well then, what are we waiting for? She asked as they closed the door and walked towards the Hokage mansion. Jiraiya and Kushina weren't sure what this was about, but Naruto rubbed the seal on his hand as he had an idea of what the slug princess wanted to talk about. Hokage mansion. Naruto, Kushina and Jiraiya came into the room to see Kakashi, Sakura, and Shizune also. Kakashi was leaning up against the wall while Sakura and Shizune were beside Tsunade. Alright, Haim, I brought them. Now can you tell us why you're so serious? Jiraiya said, and Tsunade narrowed her eyes. Don't be so simple, Jiraiya. You know you're as curious as I am. I want to know how Kushina's alive. Not that I'm not happy to see her, but it's still an issue, Tsunade said, making Naruto mentally gulp that she confirmed his theory. Kushina seemed to understand Naruto's problem. She still remembered Naruto's talk with her about how she was alive, and while she couldn't believe it, she knew he was right. She had seen the frustration in his eyes and racked her brain with something to say. Besides, No one would believe Naruto and not many people would want to see the Shinigami anyway. Well, I'll admit I'm curious, but sometimes it's best not to ask questions and just accept things, Jiraiya said to her. Normally he would have been on Naruto and Kushina about it since for 2 years they never explained anything, but to him that was their business and they would tell him if they wanted. I understand that, Jiraiya, but I still must know. So what do the both of you know? Tsunade asked while Kakashi and Sakura showed concern that Naruto might be in trouble. Naruto was in a wreck. His contract was a lot more frustrating to have. Well, Ba-chan, the thing is that I had left Konoha, Kushina said, interrupting Naruto. Jiraiya, Tsunade and the others turned to her and the redhead sighed. She looked at the ground and feigned some depression, but to everyone it was believable. Naruto figured his mother could be an actor maybe. I was told that Naruto didn't survive the extraction and I was already sad that Minato didn't make it, so I left. I just found Naruto-kun 2 years ago in the plains of a town. I was so happy to see him and I came back to get some answers, she said to everyone while she turned to Kakashi, who raised an eyebrow while she advanced on him. And while we're on the subject, Kakashi, please tell me what you've been teaching my son as a shinobi. Kushina asked and Kakashi gulped. Sakura snickered and chuckled at her sensei. He really hadn't taught them much that she knew of. Teamwork and chakra control were it, which was quite good, but it was also a failure since Sasuke had left. I did like Minato-sensei did. He emphasized teamwork over anything and I was teaching that to Naruto and Sakura, Kakashi said while Kushina giggled. It was more strained than anything else as she grabbed Kakashi's collar. Kakashi, my son's taijutsu was atrocious when I taught him. He had virtually no ninjutsu techniques and his chakra control, while quite good, could have been better. It's nice that you focused on teamwork, but no individual has skills, then teamwork is dead, Kushina said as she bonked Kakashi on the head. The Jonin winced at the pain and rubbed his head while Kushina managed to take his orange book. And I told you to stop reading this stuff. You were too young to be reading it anyway. Kushina said and Kakashi held his head down before a cough from Tsunade brought the woman back. Who told you that the extraction was a failure? Tsunade asked and Kushina thought it over for a second. I don't remember. It was some doctor, but I don't remember the face anymore. It hardly matters to me anyway. I'm just happy to see my son, Kushina said with a bright smile across her face while Naruto nodded in agreement with her. They really didn't like to lie, but the situation sort of called for it and Naruto wasn't ready to reveal his contract just yet to everyone. Tsunade and everyone else thought over her answer and they all seemed to be okay with it, so Tsunade dropped it, for now. It was then that a Chunin bursted through the door and bowed before Tsunade, interrupting everyone. Hokage-sama, urgent news from Suna. The Chunin said and Tsunade stood to her feet while everyone else widened their eyes. What is it? She asked readily and the Chunin gave her a scroll. Tsunade grabbed it into her hands and unfurled it. She read it and narrowed her eyes while she gritted her teeth. Ba-chan, what's the problem? Naruto asked and Tsunade glared at everyone in the room. It says that the cage was kidnapped by Akatsuki, Tsunade said, making Naruto gasp, and so did everyone else. Gaara, the blonde thought and gritted his teeth while everyone was still in shock over the news. It seems that Akatsuki is on the move. It also shows how strong they are if they can take the cage, Jiraiya said, making Tsunade nod in agreement with him. Alright then, Team 7, this will be your first mission. I want you to go to Suna and find out all the details, then find a way to get Gaara back. Also, you must get there within 3 days since it says that Kankuro has been poisoned by one of the members. Sakura, this will require you indefinitely, Tsunade said and Sakura nodded. Kushina came up and grinned. I think I should go too, she said and Tsunade narrowed her eyes. I can't do that, Kushina. You're not a shinobi of my village, so it's not wise to do so, Tsunade said while Kushina rolled her eyes. Are you kidding, Databane? Jiraiya told me about Akatsuki. Don't underestimate my skills, Tsunade. You of all people know how strong I am. If nothing else, then I'm insurance for Naruto-kun's team. Besides, it was my understanding that a team was comprised of 4 people, not 3, Kushina said, and Tsunade mentally cursed that she was right. She wanted to refute that, but without Sasuke then the team was incomplete even if Sakura and Naruto showed good teamwork. Come on Harem, I agree with Kushina. You could make her the replacement for Team 7. Her skills are too much of a waste to let her not do this. Besides Kakashi, she's the only one who can fight S-rank shinobi on your team. Naruto can hold them off, but he needs experience for that. Just let her go Harem, Jiraiya said, and Tsunade growled. This was so much easier when stuff like this wasn't happening. Alright, fine. I'll grant Kushina permission. We'll go into some detail when you come back. Now get going, Tsunade said, and everyone nodded. They quickly left the room while Tsunade massaged her temples. With Team 7, Kushina had run back to the house to change her clothes while the others were heading for the gates. They had everything they needed, now they were waiting for Kushina to arrive. I can't believe they managed to take Gaara. We've got to hurry, Naruto said, growling while Sakura tried to calm him down, but she knew it was right. Kakashi sighed with a nod, and before long Kushina came back. She was wearing some blue shorts and shin guard shoes while she wore a black shirt with mesh armor underneath it. She was carrying a sword on her back and ran past them. Come on, let's go. No time to lose, Databane, she said, and headed into the trees. Naruto quickly followed her, and so did Kakashi and Sakura. The 4 quickly rushed through the trees, but they watched as Naruto quickly passed Kushina and started to dash off in the direction of Suna. Kakashi would have told Naruto to slow down and stay with them, but Kushina was right on his tail, and he always knew about the Uzumaki woman's talent for sensory, so they were fine. Sochi, slow down. We won't get there in a day even with your speed and my speed. Besides, you have to remember that Kakashi and Sakura aren't as fast as us, Kushina said, and Naruto gritted his teeth. He sighed and let up on his speed enough for Kakashi and Sakura to catch up to him. Naruto, calm down. We'll save Gaara, Sakura said, and Naruto narrowed his eyes as they all rushed through the trees. I know, but I just hate them. Akatsuki thinking they can just do that. I hate it, Naruto said, his eyes turning red. Kushina lowered her eyes when she saw that her son might have lost a good friend. Sakura and Kakashi frowned when they saw him in distress, but they all continued to run for Sunagaku. It had been over half an hour since they started running before Sakura looked at the ground. Hey guys, wait a minute. There's Temari-san, Sakura said, and everyone shot towards the ground. Temari turned around to see the 4 coming up to her and waved as they got closer to her. Hey guys, what are you doing all the way out here? She asked, smiling at them, but everyone was too serious and she noticed that. We're on our way to Suna, Temari-san. Gaara's been kidnapped, Sakura said, and Temari widened her eyes. The silence reigned in the forest as she tried to understand Sakura's words. He's been kidnapped? Temari asked, and Sakura nodded. Also, Kankuro-san's been poisoned. We're going to Suna right now, Sakura said, and Temari nodded with them. Then what are we waiting for? She asked as she rushed off with Team 7 following her. Everyone rushed towards Suna and wasted no time in trying to get there either. Somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Deidara and Sasori came into a secret cavern and dropped Gaara on the ground. He was passed out from the fight he had with Deidara while the 2 Akatsuki members sat down in front of the astral projections of the other members. Jinchuriki, take down him. He was kind of a pain, Deidara said while Sasori sighed. You didn't have to bring attention to us though. That stupid explosion nearly had Suna nin on us. You should be lucky that we got away, Sasori said, and Deidara waved him off. Please, art is an explosion, Sasori my man. It's an instant affect of beauty, Deidara said, and Sasori rolled his eyes at his partner. Wrong, Deidara. Art is to be preserved for all to enjoy, Sasori said, and most of Akatsuki watched them bicker before their leader had enough. Sasori, Deidara, that's enough. We will begin the extraction of the Aikibi Jinchuriki. It will take 3 days to do so, rest up and then we will start immediately, he said, making Deidara and Sasori nod in agreement with him. The two rested in the cave so they could replenish their chakra for the extraction process. 2 days later, Naruto, Sakura, Kakashi, Kushina and Temari all arrived in Suna and were immediately briefed by Baki about the events. He told them how Gaara fought hard and even managed to protect the village from destruction by the Akatsuki. He also said how Kankuro followed them, but fell ill to a deadly poison that would end his life if Sakura didn't hurry. On that note, Sakura quickly assembled the medical staff of Suna and started to work on Kankuro while she had managed to get an antidote for the poison from Suna's greenhouse. Meanwhile, Naruto, Kakashi, and Kushina were sitting in the lobby of the room waiting for Sakura's verdict. Naruto tapped his foot impatiently, and the only reason that he wasn't ranting his head off was because his mother kept calming him down enough to prevent him from doing so. To think that Kankuro went down is quite a shock. Not to mention that he didn't even prove to be a challenge to them. It shows how terrifying Akatsuki is, Kakashi said, making Naruto and Kushina nod with him. It was then that they turned to see a white-haired woman next walking up to them while she squinted her eyes at him. That's him. The White Fang of Konoha, she said as she charged the Jonin. Kakashi widened his eyes, but Naruto intercepted the woman and matched her blow for blow that she would have tried to deal to Kakashi. Hey, why are you targeting Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked while the woman narrowed her eyes. Kakashi. He's not the White Fang of Konoha. The woman asked, and Naruto shook his head while Kakashi chuckled and rubbed the back of his head. That was my father. I'm sorry if I confused you, Kakashi said while the woman's brother came up behind her. Nei-chan, you're mistaken. You should apologize to them, the old man said while the woman chuckled with a hoarse laugh. Sorry about that, I was playing dumb hee, she said, making Naruto, Kakashi, and Kushina look at her weirdly before the Uzumaki gasped and stood to her feet. You're Chiyo. I remember you from one of my missions to Suna. You were the only woman who actually scolded me for something, Kushina said as Chiyo turned to her. She looked at the red hair and slim figure and also widened her eyes. Is that the same brat I've seen? Kushina, you're still as young as ever. How have you been? Chiyo said as she and Kushina shook hands. I've been great. Completely revived, Kushina said with a smile, and Chiyo nodded, leaving Naruto and Kakashi in the dark about how Kushina knew the woman. Oh, Naruto-kun, this is Chiyo. One of Suna's greatest puppet wielders during her time, and she might still be. I had a mission to do with my squad and I encountered her. I tell you, she was no joke, Databane, Kushina said, and Chiyo chuckled. You still say that when you're excited, huh? Chiyo asked, and Kushina blushed with a small smile. So I hear that you are after my foolish grandson. I hate to think he did this. He really has no respect for this village. I introduced him to puppetry to help him with his parents being alone. How is Kankuro doing? Chiyo asked, and Kakashi shrugged his shoulders. We don't know, Sakura is in there now. We might know soon, Kakashi said, and Chiyo sighed. Well, if Tsunade's not doing, then she has her apprentice doing it then. I still think you shouldn't be interfering in Suna business, Kushi brat, Chiyo said, and Kushina rolled her eyes. Whatever, Ba-chan. Just accept our help and we'll get your cage back, Kushina said, and Chiyo simply sighed with a nod. It was a few more hours, but Sakura came out with sweat dripping from her forehead. Sigh. Well, I managed to get rid of all the poison and Kankuro is resting at the moment. I gave him the cure and made 3 vials just in case. If we want to catch up to Gaara-san, I think we should do it now, Sakura said, making everyone nod. And I'm coming with you people. I can handle myself and I'll deal with Sasori. He's become too much of a problem and I need to correct him now, Chiyo said, and while everyone else wanted to retort her, she left them no room for argument. Alright, the sun is still high in the sky, so we should get going right now, Kushina said, and everyone nodded in agreement with her. Back in Konoha, with Tsunade. I'm sending you 4 as backup to Team 7. They probably don't need it, But with Akatsuki you can't be too careful, so I want you to back them up when you meet up with them, Tsunade said to all the members of Team Guy. The Jonin leader nodded and held a thumbs up. Alright you guys, we need to make it there now. A day ago Kakashi sent us a messenger bird telling us where to meet up. We will head there now. With any luck we'll get there in a day, Guy said before Lee interrupted. No sensei, we can get there in half a day if we push ourselves, Lee said, and Tenten sighed while rubbing the back of her head. Come on you two. It takes at least 2 days to get there. I'm surprised that Kakashi and his group made it to Suna in 2 days. They must have really been in a hurry, Tenten said while Neji nodded. Look, the longer we talk the better the enemy's chances are. Let's go, Neji said, and everyone nodded. They quickly left the village with Guy leading the three towards the possible place where Akatsuki was due to intel received to them. With Team 7, everyone was currently packing up their stuff. They were all heading for the desert as Naruto looked up at the sky. Gaara, I'll save you. I swear it, Naruto said, and immediately Kakashi stood in front of everyone and rubbed his head. Our ally's cage has been taken. Well, we'll get him back now, Kakashi said, and everyone nodded. They ran off towards the place where some Suna shinobi had pinpointed a spot where they saw the two Akatsuki members go. Alright then, let's go now. I don't want to let them go, Naruto said, glaring coldly as everyone ran a little faster. Chio and Sakura looked at Naruto in confusion. They both didn't know why the blonde could care so much about someone else or even how he could go so fast. Kushina quickly kept up with Naruto as they ran through the desert and a good pace for everyone and continued to run. In the cave, the Akatsuki were currently taking the chakra of the Ikibi from Gaara's body and it was all being consumed into the statue behind them. They had been doing this for a long time, but no one was exhausted just yet. How long have we been at this? Deidara asked while Sasori sighed at him. We're almost done. Stop complaining. Those shinobi who followed us are sure to alert their allies. We'll be in for a fight if we don't finish, Sasori said while the leader turned to two of the members, one with red eyes and the other with shark skin. Itachi, Kisame, if anyone tries to come here then stop them, he said, and they both nodded. This is starting to get good. Right, Itachi-san, Kisame said as they disappeared from view, leaving the rest to everyone else. Well, on the off chance that they do meet us, we'll just have to show them what we've got, right, Sasori my man? Deidara asked, and Sasori just as easily nodded. Don't underestimate them. It will soon be time to collect the other Jinchuriki as well, the leader said, and everyone nodded in agreement with him as they continued to take the Biju from Gaara and with it his life. With Team 7, if anyone could say anything about Naruto, then they could at least say that he was crazy fast now. He was quite far ahead of everyone except Kushina, who was the only one who could stay with her son. Chio, Sakura and Kakashi stayed at a slower pace. They had been running without a break for about 4 hours and they had just exited the desert and into the trees of a small valley. Naruto-kun, slow down, Kushina said, trying to calm her son, but the blonde got his hot-headedness from his mother and she knew that. We have to get to Gaara-san. I know what I can do to help him, but I'd rather he not die at all. Gaara's been alone, Ka-san. A lot longer than me. He had no one and his village hated him. He's finally the cage and these bastards want to take him because of the problem inside him, Naruto said, but unknown to him the three behind the mother and son were listening also. Tell me, boy, why do you care so much about Gaara? He's not even from your village, Chio said, and Naruto narrowed his eyes. It doesn't matter. He's the same as me. Tell me, when you people put Shukaku inside him, did you ever think about how he felt? How Gaara would be affected by it? You only saw a chance to contain a monster and turn Gaara into a sacrifice. I don't like it. Not at all, Naruto said, and Chio held her head down. Sakura was about to scold Naruto for that, but Kakashi stopped her. Naruto's right. Something like this shouldn't have been done, but it was, Kakashi said, and Sakura turned to him. Kakashi-sensei, what did Naruto mean by saying that Gaara was the same as him? Sakura asked and Kakashi narrowed his eyes. A Jinchuriki. It means a living sacrifice. Naruto knows Gaara's pain because he's also a Jinchuriki, Kakashi said, making Sakura and Chio widen their eyes. They both looked at Naruto in awe and shock before Sakura turned back to her sensei. So, which one does he have? Sakura asked, though if she remembered her history, which she was known for back in the academy, then she would have guessed. The Kyuubi no Yoko. The one that attacked Konoha 16 years ago, Kakashi said, and Sakura stared at Naruto. She just felt ashamed of the way she acted back in her youth. He's been that way all his life and he has the time to care for someone else. I can't believe it, Sakura thought while Chio was thinking over some things that concerned her as she looked at Naruto. It took a little longer, but they managed to make it to the plains of a grassy field and the sight they saw shocked him. Naruto narrowed his eyes while Kakashi stood forward. Itachi Uchiha, Kakashi said while Itachi looked at the ground and felt like he just received a blast from the past when he saw Kushina. He raised an eyebrow while Kushina tried to keep her emotions under control. She remembered Itachi, but she would never imagine that this would happen. Itachi was an S-rank criminal. Well, Naruto-kun, you've grown and you brought an unexpected guest. How are you, Kushina-san? Itachi asked while Kushina narrowed her eyes even more. I'm fine, Itachi, but not the same I could say for you. Makoto must be crushed to know you're doing this, Kushina said while Itachi brushed a hand through his hair and closed his eyes. It hardly matters anymore. In case you didn't know it, the Uchiha clan is gone, Itachi said, and Kushina widened her eyes. She never heard that from anyone. Though she did wonder why it was so vacant when she passed by it with Naruto that one time. She never imagined that Makoto and the entire clan was gone. They're gone. Who killed them? Kushina asked and Itachi sighed. He really didn't want to talk about his past at the moment, but this seemed to be a special occasion. Shouldn't it be obvious? Since besides my little brother that I'm the only Uchiha alive. The rumors also say that only an Uchiha can defeat an Uchiha, so what do you think, Kushina-san? Itachi asked and Kushina narrowed her eyes even more. Her chakra flared while Naruto's did also. Kakashi narrowed his eye at the Uchiha and sighed. He was about to fight, but Kushina held up her hand. Kakashi, save your chakra. I've fought plenty of Uchiha before, Kushina said, and Naruto turned to her. Not without Mikasa-san. 2 Uzumaki are better than 1 Uchiha if you know what I mean, Naruto said, and Kushina smiled. So on that note, Kakashi, Sakura and Chio decided to stay back, and while they wanted to pass Itachi they were reluctant to leave Naruto and Ku.